Hey guys, welcome to my shop. Today we're going to build the Spartan 300 sword and we're going to make it as accurate to the movie as possible. I'm nudging you to subscribe now because you're absolutely going to love the video. Let's get started. Right off the bat you'll notice that it already looks like a sword, and that's because I went ahead and I profiled the shape and ground that out. I plan on forging in the bevels on this sword because I need to leave a lot of meat on it for the next process. I started by forging in the top clip first. That's going to force the whole cutting edge down as I forge in the top. Then I'll flip it over and I'll forge in the cutting edge of the sword all the way from the hilt to the tip. If you can count how many shots of espresso that I drink in this video, leave it in the comment section below. This sword had numerous complexities that gave me cold feet to start, but I'll tell you what, just like with any other project, if you just get started, things kind of fall into place, and I was able to work through several different processes to get this sword completed. I'm excited to show you some of the cool things that I came up with. So here we're going to throw it in the annealing tank, let it completely anneal so it's easier for this process right here. This is where we're going to create the raised ridge on the sword, just like in the movie. I couldn't wrap my mind around how to do this until I figured out to use thick stock and grind the material away. I probably could have come up with some sort of forging fixture to do this, but this seemed to be the way that I could get it done in my shop fairly easily with the tools that I had at hand already. Basically what I had to do was create two fullers and then remove away all of the excess material, leaving a raised ridge. This was the next complexity that I had to work around. A sword this long, and you could see that my forge is only 12 inches deep. So I bought some fire bricks and I created an expansion chamber behind my forge so that I could get this entire sword up to heat and heat treat it properly. I did do an intermittent quench here. Rather than just quenching it completely, I did an intermittent quench to give it more springiness to the steel, and it worked out wonderfully. I must warn you, however, this does create a lot of smoke, so please open your doors and let it ventilate properly. Pull it out, make sure everything's nice and straight and true before we move on to the next phase. Everything's looking really good here. And this is after the temper cycle. I went 400 for 2 hours, let it cool off, and did it 400 for another 2 hours. I wanted this sword to look like it came right off the battlefield, so I'm using a wire wheel to clean the scale off of the blade after the heat treatment, and that'll clean it up nice. Now I'm ready to grind in my bevels and make this thing an actual sword so it can cut. For the handle, I've decided to use railroad spikes because it's free material I had laying around the shop. It seemed perfect. I am going to take these and heat them up, and then we're going to put them in a vise, take a hammer, and we're going to bend our radiuses. We're going to try to get both the top and bottom radius identical, and I'll show you how I check those to make sure that they're nice and bent exactly the same. It starts by clamping them in the same place when you insert the spike or whatever material you're using into your vise. Index your part and your vise the same on both pieces, and then make sure they're flat. You can lay one piece down, bring your other piece over, and check the bend radius to make sure that they're identical. You can make any changes that you need while they're both hot. Cutting off the excess material now. If you don't have a milling machine, don't be fussed. You could easily do this with the drill press and a Dremel tool, but I have a milling machine and I love it, so I'm going to use it. I'm going to take a quick second to show you guys what I've decided to do here with these railroad spikes. In order to get the shape for the guard that I wanted, I had to cut the outside of the spike off so I could thin the guard material out. These are just too heavy. I know the sword in the movie, they thin this out here to make it lighter, and they also thin the side profile, which I'm doing both, and I'm rounding this inside radius so there's no place in here that'll bust your knuckles. So I'm cutting this off, breaking this round corner out here so it's not so round, and I'm cutting these off back here and giving them a nice taper on all four sides and kind of rounding it so that it can't catch your hand anywhere. And the railroad spikes are going to work out just fine. They're going to make an awesome guard. Let's get these heat treated. The railroad spikes, might as well heat treat them. Now that we've got the blade blued and nice and dark, we'll move on to putting the handle together. We've got our railroad spikes here. I love the texture these took on from forging them. We've got Honduran rosewood, which is a super hard wood that we're going to use as the core for the handle. This will get wrapped in leather here in a minute, so I really didn't pick this wood for its color or grain or texture. I really picked it because it's an incredibly hard, dense wood. So here we're creating the pocket for the tang to fit in. We're just going to drill several holes across the top, and then we'll connect them together with a file. After we're done with that, we'll shape the handle on the grinder. Whoa! Yikes, hopefully not drop it too many more times. And now we're moving on to the leather. I did soak the leather in a little bit of water. That helps the leather stretch and form. I'll wrap it around this handle and let it dry. After it dries, then I'll hit it with some different leather dye. I'm using some brown here. The first color brown didn't really do it for me, so I added a second color brown and got the color that I was going for. Now we'll tack it all together with the welding machine. and we put some super sheen on it. Now we're gonna buff it. We're gonna buff the edges, and then I'm gonna take this sinew, some glover's needles, and I'm gonna wrap it around the outside in a woven pattern. I'll show you what that looks like. Spartan sword.